Greetings and welcome back to Doctor Who Revisited, where I go through every single episode of Doctor Who from 1963 all the way up to 2022 and review them. And this episode that we are about to talk about, in my opinion, is nothing short of a masterpiece. Doctor Who at its finest. It is the enemy of the world. First of all, it is the Doctor Who debut of Barry Letts as a director who obviously later became producer and sort of pseudo-showrunner at the time for the Jon Pertwee era, but this was the first episode where his name appears in the credits properly as a director, and oh my goodness, he did not disappoint. This episode is a tour de force from the acting, the set design, the storytelling. Every single part about this episode works to perfection. Now, I will say this. For many, many years, this episode was lost to us. This full serial, I should say. It was considered a missing episode. All but one or maybe two of its episodes were missing for many, many years until about 10 years ago, leading up to the 50th anniversary special of Doctor Who. The Doctor Who fans received a Christmas miracle of sorts where all parts of the serial were found and collected and re-released properly as the full episode in its entirety. And I will say this, the first couple of times I watched this episode, when I watched it all for the first time and when I did my first rewatch, I watched the missing episode reconstruction of it. And I still loved the episode, but oh my goodness, seeing the entire episode the way it was intended to be viewed really elevates the experience a lot for me personally. It's just, this episode is amazing. First of all, let's start with the elephant in the room. The main villain of the piece looks exactly like the Doctor, obviously being played by Patrick Troughton. But the way Patrick Troughton manages to change his acting and his characterization of both of these characters from the Doctor and Salamander, it's like you would not believe that they're both being played by the same actor. That is what makes Patrick Troughton one of the greatest actors of his generation, and especially because even in the writing, Salamander is absolutely nothing like the second Doctor, and Patrick Troughton manages to deliver this performance and not only fool the characters in the story, he fools the audience into believing that he is a different man. First of all, let's talk about the main setting of the episode. It's set in the far distant future of the year 2018, where climate change has gotten to a certain point that it needed to be addressed, and so this guy, Salamander, comes up with a solar device to fix the world's problems, which also, in a way, allows him to control volcanoes. Somehow. But that whole act has made him incredibly popular with the masses and a very strong political leader in contention for being a sort of pseudo leader of the world, in a way, where in reality he doesn't really have the world's best interests in mind. And I just love the way that the different curveballs that the storyline throws at you, the different twists and turns that we get in this episode. We think that the majority of the episode is mainly focused around this political coup being that the people who are against Salamander are trying to enact, while in reality Salamander not only has his own agenda, but it really kind of feels like a completely different episode when it's revealed that there's this separate colony of people living underground of all places, where Salamander is lying to them, telling them that there's been this massive nuclear war or whatever, that the surface world is unsafe, and he keeps coming back, bringing them food and providing shelter for them, lying to them, and in return, they operate this machine that he's got that really... It's the machine that actually activates the volcanoes and really just helps create these natural disasters that make him a popular man amongst the people and allow him to have leverage over the political leaders of the world on the surface. What a crazy idea! What a crazy notion for a Doctor Who episode! This episode really does think outside the box in so many different ways, and not just the TARDIS, but yeah, I can go on talking all day about how much I love the story, but let's just, or rather the premise, I should say. Let's go ahead and talk about the minute details of the story. First of all, it's noticed pretty fast that the Doctor looks like the most powerful man in the world at the time, essentially, for lack of a better word. But he's immediately found by the Resistance, the people who are opposed to Salamander, and are trying to get the Doctor to work with them to take down Salamander. Now, even though Patrick Troughton really is all over this episode, the Doctor himself doesn't really show up a lot in this serial overall. When it really comes down to it, it's really mostly just the Patrick Troughton playing Salamander the majority of the time, alongside Fraser Hines and Deborah Watling as Jamie and Victoria, respectively. So, really, in a way, you still do get the Fraser Hines, Deborah Watling, Patrick Troughton experience. It's just Patrick Troughton isn't really playing the Doctor for the majority of the episode. The Doctor is mostly a no-show, but that does not mean he does not have his role to play in the episode itself. And I love the way that the Resistance comes up with a plan of having, really staging a rescue operation by Jamie. Then that's how Jamie is introduced into the ranks, and that's how they introduce Victoria as sort of spies into Salamander's operation. It's a spy episode through and through, when you really stop and think about it. The other characters in the Resistance, I love the woman that I can't remember the name at the moment because it's been a while since it's in the episode. I apologize, but this is really where the proper episode and not the missing side of the episode really shines. Something you don't get in the reconstruction of the episode. This woman kicks ass. That is a woman you do not want to mess with. She beats up men twice her size, and she knocks them down to the ground. She is a badass through and through, and she's doing the majority of the fight sequences in this episode, and I love it. And it's what I said earlier, female empowerment. It's really powerful. It's really powerful. It is a strong female character done right. And this is the 60s we're talking about. So it's great that Doctor Who is so forward-thinking and so progressive at the time with this character who really, she's the muscle of the group. When you really stop and think of it, she's small in size, but she really does pack a punch. She packs a wallop. Speaking of female empowerment, there's some really good representation in the episode. One of the very few episodes from the classic series that actually features people of color, with the black woman who is sort of serving as Salamander's food taster. Not a very respectable position for a woman of color to be in at the time, I agree, but I do think that the story really does shine a light on her and how she appears to be fiercely loyal to Salamander, and then she has the switch over and switches sides and joins the good guys. And she's a really major, really important character. Unfortunately, she gets taken out pretty quickly. And after doing that, which, not the best, maybe, representation, but at least it's a good step in the right direction. I mentioned a couple of episodes ago of how I loved that in the 10th Planet, the flight commander was a black man. So that they were thinking that far ahead at the time. And I like that they're continuing it with this episode, just, not in the best possible way. That being said, I talked about the premise. I talked about the characters in the Resistance, the characters on Salamander's side. I like their portrayal. I like their characterization of, they are fiercely loyal to Salamander, but they're not, like, mindless zombie henchmen, in a way. They do have their own minds. They do speak their minds. They do things that Salamander would not approve of to satisfy their own personal vendettas against some of the characters in the story, but they do get their comeuppance in the end. They no bad deed goes unpunished in this episode, and that's really what I like about it. But I think really the moment that really seals the deal is when Patrick Troughton is presumably playing the character of Salamander opposite the guy that he ousted from the business, when gets him to reveal that a lot of what was taking place in the episode, with the underground people operating the machine, was really just his doing all along, and then the rug is pulled under your feet, and you realize it wasn't Salamander the whole time, it was the Doctor pretending to be Salamander to get this guy to reveal his secrets. And it's a major theme all throughout all 7 parts of this serial, or 6 parts, I can't remember at the moment, but it highlights the Doctor's brilliance in a sense that he never really trusted the guy to begin with. He went along with everything that he said to do. He allowed Jamie and Victoria to go along with everything that he told them to do, but he never fully trusted him, and you can see it all throughout these several different segments of the episode, but it really comes into a head at the final part where the Doctor reveals that he wasn't really Salamander. In that scene, he was the Doctor the whole time, and that is where the other woman that I mentioned earlier turns on him, and she has a gun to him, and that's how the other people, the underground people, turn on him as well as turning on Salamander, and just all hell breaks loose. And that it's a really great way of. I love the storytelling in this episode a lot, and just when you feel you've had enough, the storyline sucker punches you again by throwing Salamander into the TARDIS, making you feel he is the Doctor, or at least making Jamie and Victoria feel like he was the Doctor, and then reveal that the Doctor was behind him the whole time, and it wasn't really the Doctor, it was Salamander, and you get this Patrick Troughton on Patrick Troughton fight sequence that obviously could have been done better if it was in the modern series. Obviously, they had to work with what they had at the time, but it really just highlights how big of a threat Salamander is, and in a way, his pride and his overconfidence is what eventually became his downfall, in a sense that he tries to take off in the TARDIS without properly closing the doors first. Which something that doesn't really happen a lot in Doctor Who, especially in the modern series, but the TARDIS goes off, there's this massive shakeup inside the TARDIS console room, and Salamander gets thrown out of the open doors into the time vortex itself, and disintegrates from the great pressure of traveling inside the vortex. Like, what a way to go! I mean, sure, he deserves it, he's a villain, and a very nasty one at that, but still, no one deserves that fate. Or rather, very few people actually deserve that fate, I believe, in my opinion. But this episode is a great lead-up into the next episode, and I can't really wait to talk about that one, so I'll just wrap up this review by saying I love it, I love it, I love it. It's one of my favorite Patrick Troughton era episodes, and it's one of those rare episodes where there's no alien monsters to defeat. The main villains are nothing but humans at their worst. It's something that a lot of episodes in Doctor Who don't really do anymore, especially in the modern series of just no aliens, no creatures. There's sci-fi stuff in it. Obviously, it takes place in the future, and there is some sci-fi elements in there with the underground people and controlling volcanoes and whatnot, but all the characters are human, and the main villain is a human himself. So that's something that I wish more Doctor Who episodes would do in the modern series. But, only time will tell. So until the next time, everyone, don't believe the government. Hi there. Thank you for watching the video. And if you enjoyed it, don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and tell your friends. I'll see you next time.